Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
And now, The Federal Drive with Terry Gerton, sponsored by GEHA.
Welcome to The Federal Drive on Federal News Network. It's Monday, April 6th. I'm your host, Terry Gerton, and I'm glad you're here. As the week begins, we're taking a first look at the President's 2027 budget, starting with the headlines and then focusing on what they tell us about federal resources and capacity. Coming up on this hour of the Federal Drive, the budget landed on Capitol Hill last week, but left plenty of unanswered questions. We'll take a closer look at how Congress is navigating this budget moment. Plus, year after year, the same financial weaknesses keep showing up in the government's books. Those stories and much more ahead during this hour of the Federal Drive. We begin with this. The White House is proposing a significant military pay raise as part of its massive $1.5 trillion defense budget request. Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis joins me today with more. Anastasia, thanks for being here.
Hi, Terry.
Let's talk about the defense part of this 2027 budget and start with military pay. What is the White House proposing there?
Yeah, so the White House has proposed kind of a tiered military pay raise. Junior enlisted service members would see the largest increase under this plan. So troops ranked E5 and below would see a 7% increase. More senior enlisted members and officers, that would be E6 through O3, would get a 6% pay raise. And then finally, officers in the ranks of O4 and higher would get a 5% pay raise.
That's a really different approach. How does that compare to prior military pay raises?
Yeah, definitely. Well, if lawmakers agree with this vision and if they pass it into law, this would exceed recent pay raises for military personnel. Over the last couple of years, that would be 2020 and on, military pay raises have ranged from 3% to 5.2%. In 2025, however, junior enlisted service members received a historic 14.5% pay raise. That's the year when lawmakers focused on various quality of life issues, and they approved an additional 10% pay raise for junior enlisted service members on top of that 4.5% across the board pay raise that everyone else received. The White House said, and I quote, "This enduring investment far above the standard annual military pay raise builds on the president's recruiting and retention success."
Well, let's zoom back out to the total defense budget, $1.5 trillion. It's over a 44% increase. How is the administration justifying the defense budget of that size?
Yeah, in the budget documents, the White House said this budget request, and I quote, recognizes the current global threat environment and restores the readiness and lethality of our forces. They described this budget as historic for its investments in the administration's priorities, such as Golden Dome, the Missile Defense Initiative, and investment in what they call Trump's Golden Fleet. But Trump has been teasing the 1.5 trillion budget for quite a while. It started in January, and at the time, he said that the revenue being brought in by the tariffs would be sufficient to cover increased military spending. Now, of course, in February, the Supreme Court ruled that many of the president's tariffs, especially those imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, were illegal. But the proposed increase comes as the U.S. is spending billions of dollars on the war in Iran. The U.S. and Israel began striking the country on February 28th. Although it looks like the budget doesn't include funding to finance that war, the White House is going to ask Congress for a supplemental spending package to cover those costs. I also wanted to put this budget into perspective. Todd Harrison from the American Enterprise Institute said that this would be the highest level of funding for defense in U.S. history, surpassing even the peak funding during World War II. And that peak funding was $1.2 trillion in today's dollars. Trump also recently said that the federal government needs to focus on military spending rather than various federal safety net programs. Here's President Trump.
We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it, too. They should pay. They have to raise their taxes, but they should pay for it. And we could lower our taxes a little bit to them to make up, but it's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection. We have to guard the country.
Anastasia, what have you heard from lawmakers so far on this defense budget?
We have the Senate and House Armed Services Committee's chairman, Roger Wicker, and Mike Rogers. They said that they're committed to passing this budget into law. However, they did not specify how exactly they will get to that $1.5 trillion figure, or whether they will pursue another reconciliation bill, which is what the White House wants Republicans to do. They want Republicans to pursue the same strategy as last year and have a reconciliation bill worth of $350 billion. In the budget documents, they said, and I quote, "The administration has successfully shifted the paradigm by including increase to defense spending in a reconciliation bill passed with only Republican votes, and that the strategy has proven to be a success, and that the administration will continue to deploy it in this year's budget." It's not clear if Trump will have enough support within his own party, given this last year's multi-trillion-dollar spending package. Meanwhile, Democrats oppose the budget of this size. The vice chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, for example, said the budget proposal is bleak and unacceptable, and that the only responsible thing to do with this budget is to toss it in the trash.
That's Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis. Anastasia, thanks for joining us.
Definitely. Thank you, Terry.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com.